The world can be a place of danger, a place of extremes, and a place of beauty beyond belief. Here are the top 15 most stunning things caught on video. Number 15. Swimming with whales. While we might be the most dominant species on Earth, there are plenty of animals that overwhelm us in terms of size and power, and it's only when we're in their presence that we truly understand our place in the world. One of the largest and most spectacular of all creatures is the humpback whale, a species of baleen whale that can grow up to 52 feet long and weigh as much as 33 tons. Found in oceans across the globe, they have a distinctive body shape in comparison to other whales, with unusually long pectoral fins and bobbly structures on their heads. And they're popular with whale watchers because of how often they breach the water's surface. Amazingly, they'll migrate 16,000 miles each year from their feeding grounds in Arctic waters to their breeding spots in tropical environments. There's nothing quite like being in the water with them, and as this video shows, it's one of the most awe-inspiring and tranquil things you could ever do. Number 14. Volcanic Eruption. Just off the north coast of Sicily in the Tyrrhenian Sea is the small island of Stromboli, which is one of the 8 Aeolian islands that make up a volcanically active arc in the region. Its name means round because of its circular shape around the volcano that sits at its center, and it's often called the Lighthouse of the Mediterranean because of how often the volcano shows signs of activity. With an elevation of 3,038 feet above sea level, the mountain has 3 active craters on its peak, and amazingly, considering it's been continuously active over the past 5,000 years, there's a permanent population of around 500 people on the island. In July of 2019, there was a particularly powerful eruption that saw 2 major explosive events take place at the summit, as well as 20 minor ones elsewhere on the mountain. A hiker was unfortunately killed in the event due to some flying debris, and it happened on such a clear day that the activity was seen from miles around. A sailing yacht, the SY Geoia Solaris 144, just so happened to be in the perfect position to see events unfold, and this is the footage that was captured from on board.
Oh my God, did you see?
Number 13. Collapsing glacier. Around 68.7% of the world's fresh water is ice, but rather than being a permanent store, ice caps and glaciers are constantly moving, being added to and releasing water into the surrounding regions. To see the life cycle of a glacier usually involves traveling to extremely remote and hard-to-reach areas. There are some that are much more easily accessible. Patagonia is the region at the very bottom of South America, and the environment there is very different from what you'd usually associate with the rest of the continent. It's covered in mountains, lakes, fjords, and deserts, but one of the most stunning parts of the region is the Perito Moreno Glacier. Covering an area of 97 square miles, it's a part of an ice field that's the world's 3rd largest store of fresh water, and is an extremely popular tourist attraction. But it's far from being stable. Calving events, where large pieces of ice break off from the glacier into water, are quite common during summer months, and if you're lucky, you might just get a chance to see one happening for yourself. Number 12. Two-wheel Chinook landing. After first flying in 1961, Chinook helicopters have become a mainstay of militaries around the world, particularly the US, British, Japanese, and Indian armies. They've proven to be so useful because they're so adaptable to changing conditions. One moment they could be transporting heavy cargo as one of the heaviest lifting helicopters available, and the next they could be performing extraction missions because of their range, endurance, and maneuverability. They have wide loading ramps at the rear and a top speed of 196 miles per hour. Loading and unloading can be done quickly, which means they can drop in and out of a hot zone to deliver supplies and retrieve casualties before the enemy has much chance to respond. They're also a popular chopper to use in aerial displays because of how surprisingly agile they can be. But this next video shows exactly why they're so relied upon. Here, a Chinook has flown in to evacuate troops from an observation post outside of Kabul in Afghanistan. And as you'll see, the terrain is so uneven, and they're in such a rush that the pilot only needs to use 2 of the wheels to land. Number 11. Crane drops a crane. If you're carrying out a large-scale construction project, you'll undoubtedly need to use a crane to carry heavy loads into position. But how do you move a crane into place to begin with? The answer sometimes is by using another crane. As with any heavy load that has to be lifted, this just comes with inherent risks, and operators have to be aware at all times just in case something goes wrong. Unfortunately, that's what happened in 2010 when workers were moving a multi-ton crane onto a barge and one of the support cables hadn't been attached properly. This is what happened. As you can see, the cable snapped and the crane was dropped back down onto the dock. It, of course, was a complete write-off, but unfortunately no people were injured in the accident. Number 10. Coastal storm. Cornwall is the southwest region of England, and as well as being known for its own unique language and cuisine, it's also where you'll usually find the best weather of the country, thanks to the warm ocean current that flow through the Atlantic. Because of this, there are a number of picturesque villages and towns along the coast, with houses that have been built to maximize their views across the water. But this comes at a cost. When less favorable weather comes across the ocean, these homes are the first to feel the brunt of it. And this has never been more apparent than in February of 2016, when Storm Imogen hit land. With wind speeds of between 80 and 100 miles per hour, the storm whipped up the ocean's surface and battered the coast with powerful waves. There was nothing that homeowners could do but pray that the buildings would survive. But when you see videos like this, it's no surprise that the estimated cost to repair the damage by the storm was $120 million. Number 9. Plane catches fire. It's amazing to think that planes are one of the safest ways to travel long distances. But even though the chances of an incident occurring are thankfully incredibly rare, that doesn't mean they don't occasionally happen. In January of 2019, a JetBlue Airbus A321 was on the runway at Las Vegas Airport. The pilot had performed his pre-flight checks and pushed up the throttle to increase the jet's speed to takeoff. What happened next must have terrified the passengers on board, and it was lucky that because of the quick thinking of the pilot, he was able to abort the takeoff altogether. It never became fully clear why the engine caught fire like this, but had it happened just moments later once the plane was in flight, it would have almost certainly have caused it to crash. And instead of everyone walking away unharmed, there would have been serious injuries and probably a number of fatalities. We are constantly adding more people to the Top 5's production team to bring you all the best content. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on and hit the like button. Number 8. Icebreaker launch. The Great Lakes in North America are a vital trade link between the cities and towns that are on their shores and support tens of thousands of jobs. During cold weather, though, large regions can be covered in ice, so the U.S. Coast Guard has a fleet of icebreakers that they can use to carve routes across the lakes to facilitate the movement of other ships, and to be able to help any that find themselves in difficulties. To do this effectively requires state-of-the-art vessels, and one of the most impressive of all is the USCGC Mackinac, which was built and launched into the water of Lake Michigan from a shipyard in Marinette, Wisconsin. As you'd expect, a ship that's designed to perform this role has some serious weight and bulk behind it, and this led to one of the most spectacular launches you'll ever see when it was first ready to set sail in 2008. Number 7. Incredible cloud formation. If you've ever seen aerial images of hurricanes or other large storms, you'll know that the winds move in a circular motion, something that occurs because of the movement of the Earth, and is part of how storms can become increasingly powerful. It's rare to see this from the ground level, however, especially as the swirling motion is usually too slow to spot. But with the right equipment, it's possible to film a time-lapse video to show the formation of a storm cloud in all its glory. In this footage from 2019, a weather system can be seen developing over a beachfront hotel and shows it in a way that none of the guests would have been able to see. What would you have done if you found yourself in the middle of this? Number 6. Boeing 737 bird strike. Boeing first introduced the 737 in 1968, and since then it's proven to be such a popular model of aircraft that the company has produced and sold at least 10,580 of them. Despite there having been 481 accidents involving them over the years, they're so commonly used for air travel that they are statistically one of the safest ways to travel, with an average of 1 incident for every million departures. One of the reasons why they are so safe is that there are so many redundancies built into their operation. This means if something goes wrong, there's a backup system that should be able to compensate, at least for a short time, to give the plane a chance to land. And this is vital considering how unpredictable flights can sometimes be. One of the most common incidents is a strike with a bird upon takeoff, and while they most often impact the window of the flight deck, occasionally birds are sucked into the engines. It's a serious event when it happens, and only by seeing a video of it do you truly understand why. Luckily, on this occasion, no one was hurt, and the plane was able to continue on to its destination. The bird wasn't so lucky though, and is probably now looking down from up high and regretting ever flying near the airport in the first place. Number 5. Train derails. Ever since the construction of the railroads, trains have been the backbone of the American economy. They're one of the main ways that our goods are transported to and between landlocked states, and are a vital link with the rest of the country. While it's an incredibly safe way to travel, accidents do occasionally occur. And one of the most stunning ones to ever be caught on camera took place in Metairie, Louisiana in 2010. A 91-car train that was hauling grain was on its way to a yard to the west of Clearview Parkway, when 4 of the cars, which were subsequently thought to be overloaded, tipped over off the tracks. Luckily, no one was injured in this accident. The only damage was the loss of the grain which fell out of the cars. The local police deputies had to close off the nearby roads to give access to the site to railway workers, and it just took 24 hours for them to right the overturned cars so the train could resume its journey. Number 4. Out-of-control crane. During large-scale construction projects, one of the most vital pieces of equipment is a crane. They're able to safely lift heavy loads and components into place, and without them, it would be virtually impossible to construct large buildings. Of course, the bigger the building, the bigger the crane, and while they're relatively safe once they've been installed on the site, the process of getting such a large piece of machinery into position can be a dangerous one. In 2012 in Venezuela, construction workers were driving a truck down a hill to their worksite with a 400-ton crane on its trailer. Unfortunately, the tow truck's brakes failed at just the wrong moment, and this is what happened next. It's amazing that only a few of the workers suffered from minor injuries and that no one died in the accident. The crane, though, was a complete write-off, and they had to bring in another crane to help remove the heavy debris. Number 3. F-16 crash. The F-16 Fighting Falcon is a supersonic fighter aircraft that was designed for the U.S. Air Force and has been in service since 1978. More than 4,600 of them have been built. They're the most commonly used fighter jets worldwide, with rarely a war taking place without them being deployed. Their agility, speed, range, and reliability are what makes them so special, and they change the face of aerial combat. Almost every military pilot in the world has been trained to fly an F-16. That's how common they are, but not everyone nails the takeoff. At the Oshkosh, Wisconsin Air Show in 2011, an F-16 failed to lift into the air on time and crashed over the end of the runway to the horror of everyone in attendance.
I thought he was taxiing awful fast. Didn't you? Huh?
Luckily, no one was injured in the incident, but it's believed to have caused somewhere in the region of $5.4 million worth of damage. Number 2. Helicopter near miss. While it may make more sense how planes fly, helicopters are much more useful for precision landings and short-range flights, so their use is becoming increasingly popular, especially as the cost of running them is continuously reducing. This means that more pilots are needed, so there are far more people learning to fly them than ever before. But make no mistake, this is nothing like driving a car or flying a plane. And controlling a helicopter isn't exactly an intuitive process. Usually lessons take place on simulators and in open fields, because if something goes wrong, there's very little chance to correct the mistake before someone gets hurt. This next footage was recorded in Villa de Leyva in Colombia and shows just how dangerous helicopters can be. Luckily, the instructor is able to regain control of the chopper before it collides with the trees, but if he hadn't, it would have undoubtedly had ended in disaster. Number 1. Plane landing in a storm. In a usual year, there are around 60 to 70 million flights around the world, which averages to around 190,000 flights per day. And it's amazing to think that a mode of transport that involves launching yourself into the sky remains one of the safest ways to travel. Despite increasingly improving technology to ensure planes become even safer, pilots still have a vital role to make sure they're able to react to unpredictable events. And the times when they truly earn their salaries is when they have to land at an airport during a storm. Crosswinds can develop with very little warning, and it takes incredible skill and experience to put the plane down and keeping all of the passengers safe. But sometimes a pilot has to know when things are just too dangerous and decide to abort the landing and try again. This footage from Licet Airport in 2006 shows just how tough a call this can be. An Airbus A321-200 approaches its landing, but the winds make it impossible to keep the wings flat. And despite trying his best, the pilot couldn't complete the maneuver safely. Subscribe to Top 5s for more and check out some of our other popular videos.